Greetings and welcome once again to Aspects of Aliyah. I come to you with a very heavy heart today, a couple of days after the awful attack on the synagogue in Cromsall in Manchester, heart of our largest Jewish communities, where a jihadi with the name of jihad attacked the synagogue with a car and also with a knife, resulting in the death of 2 Jewish people and also injuring 3 that are still detained in hospital. It seems to me that it's no coincidence that these things all happen within days or less of the British Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, announcing the recognition of a Palestinian state, but also Donald Trump putting his programme forward to bring an end to the conflict in the Middle East. The thing that concerns me, that I'd like to speak to us about today, is even though I will be centering on our own nation, or my own nation, and on Europe to a lesser degree, but also on the United States, this disturbing rise in anti-Semitism. 2 to 3 months ago, did a broadcast, and pleased to say it was probably one of the most watched ones, called The Vice is Tightening. Today, the vice is not only tightening, it's closing rapidly. The rise in anti-Semitism is alarming worldwide, particularly in the English-speaking nations. A survey this week held a worse figure than the one I gave you in the last broadcast, where 20% of all Brits hold anti-Semitic sentiments. Now, there's been an awful lot of discussion, and I've seen this also on the American news that I watch, this idea that if you don't approve of Israel, and if you support Palestine, and everything that goes with it, it's a different thing. You are not anti-Semitic. You are simply stand for righteousness, justice, anti-Holocaust, and a censure of the State of Israel. Of course, none of this is true, or even remotely true. Now, following October the 7th, which is a couple of days away, anti-Israel demonstrations and marches started taking place in all capital cities, not against Hamas, but against Israel. Free Palestine. How sick and tired are we of hearing Free Palestine generally shouted through loudspeakers and loudhailers by middle-aged, middle-class women and men and university students, lawyers, academics and the like. If we look at these senseless demonstrations that in the UK have taken place every week now for 2 years, and even on Thursday after our horrifying attack at the Manchester synagogue, these people, these virtue signallers, these ethical moral high grounders, were not anti-Semitic. These people are there in a crowd waving flags with Universal Intifada in London, in Manchester, in Leeds, in Brussels, in Paris, in Rome, over this weekend. Universal Intifada. From the river to the sea, Palestine shall be free. Death, death to the IDF. I found it quite curious that not only on Thursday in UK, you'd have thought, despite, I'm not going to say an appeal, I'm going to say a suggestion, if you can call it that, from Sir Keir Starmer, that it would be inappropriate to demonstrate following the incident as of yesterday, today's Sunday, as of yesterday, very little attention was paid to it. And they're out again. Death, death to the IDF. Universal Intifada. Nearly 500 people arrested yesterday for supporting a terrorist organisation, demonstrating with placards, stop the genocide, support Palestine action, a terrorist group. I didn't see a single placard that said free the hostages. I didn't say anything support a peaceful solution. I didn't see anything saying Trump's plan for Middle East support it. I didn't see any of that. What I did see was the usual cant, the usual sloganising, and a lack of understanding. A colleague of mine asked 2 or 3 people, what does Universal Intifada mean? Oh, it means we should stand against all this wrongdoing of Israel. No, it doesn't. Intifada means destruction of all non-Muslims. To be a Muslim, you have to be a man, a warrior, and not a woman. Anything else is under what's called the Dhimma, and we've explained that at great length previously. When I see a group of people with a big banner, Queers for Palestine, why? And you ask them, because the Israelis are committing genocide, the Israelis are punishing Palestinians. Question, would you like to go to Gaza and stand side by side with your brothers in Hamas? Oh no, of course you wouldn't, would you? Because they'd throw you off a building. These middle-aged women, yeah? Free Palestine, death to the IDF, Universal Intifada. Go to Palestine and see how Hamas treat you. It's so disingenuous. The whole thing really is quite unbelievable. But there they are. There they were on Thursday. There they are yesterday. And I've even seen some around, even this morning, wandering around the Palestine flags, calling for these things. So let us move on from that particular instance. And we found out that 20% of people are outright anti-Semitic in the UK, more than that in Belgium, more than that in France, and unfortunately Italy is round about the same numbers, Greece even higher. But that's the situation with all these people supporting Palestine, but not supporting a two-state solution, actually supporting a one-state solution, which we've spoken about at great length in the previous broadcast, which I hope is available at this time. And we see this tightening rights, this tightening disinformation. But in England, we are starting to see something of a reaction. Unfortunately, not from where a large amount of reaction should come from, which of course is the church. However, now we've got a female Archbishop of Canterbury, who was formerly the Bishop of London, and so on. I don't think we can expect to see any advancement there. However, as we are looking at this, the ordinary British people, and certainly in France and other places, and certainly in America, have decided they've had enough. And we're now seeing people going around with this placard saying, enough is enough. Leave the Jewish people alone. It's one part of it. But the bigger fear is the Islamification of the UK. Belgium seemed to have accepted it's inevitable. France flipped and flopped between allowing it and not. Denmark have really tried to clamp down on it. Italy flip and flop about with it, and so on. But England certainly, with all the illegal immigration problems that are here, really, stats have said that because by 1930, 2030 to 40, only one in four people will not have an English parent, and by 27, Islam will outnumber all of the religions, philosophies and mindsets, unless steps are taken against it. So we are actually falling into culture wars in Europe. Bad news all round. Not good news, but one of the effects, of course, is that the Jewish people are getting more and more impressed that there is no home for them outside of Eretz Israel, which, of course, where Ezra comes into play. Let me proceed a little further, if I may. Before we look at Donald Trump's plan for the Middle East, which a lot of good intention people think has got a lot of opportunity, I'll just share with you what I personally feel are some of the shortcomings involved, and then I will leave it up to you to make your own minds up and to pray how God leads you. But in the midst of all these things going on, Greta Thunberg, or as she's known as in the UK as Grotty, and a little flotilla of 40 ships, decided they were going to bring their own aid flotilla into Gaza to distribute aid and medicine and so on. The Italian government advised this flotilla because there were quite a lot of Italians on there, doctors, several lawyers, human rights lawyers, need it be said, and intellectuals, many self-appointed, one might add. Set off, the Italian government said, don't do this, we'll escort you as far as where Italian jurisdiction finishes, but we advise you to go no further because you are going into a conflict zone. Conflict zones are not safe. Do not go there. And several of the messages came to this flotilla. The Italian government said that the Catholic Church would take all this aid and take it in with a proper license and proper arrangements with the Israeli government. This was declined. The Israeli government said, redirect your fleet, your flotilla, to Ashdod, just north of Gaza, where it can be unloaded and transported safely to the Gazans as opposed to Hamas, or at least attempt to do that, and it'll be properly observed and properly done, but you're not going to do it, neither will the UN. So what do they do? Ignore this completely, put some false propaganda out saying that drones were flying, playing music by ABBA to distract them and stop them from sleeping, and dropping itching powder by drones on these yachts, none of which, of course, have been substantiated. This flotilla has been dubbed as Greta's Vanity Cruise. So we'll take a break and then we'll look at the rest of it.
If you are a Christian, then there is no question that you owe a great debt to the Jewish people. Unto them were entrusted the oracles of God. What does that mean? It means, if not for the faithfulness of the Jewish people, we would not have this. And therefore you would not know your God, and you would not know his Son.
Israel and the Jewish people are under attack right now, and we owe them everything. The least that we can do is support them in their hour of need. So please go to EzraInternational.org and give to the Emergency Relief Fund, and your dollars will be used to help displaced and traumatized Jewish people throughout the land.
And remember, if you do nothing, relief and deliverance will arise for the Jewish people from another place. Yet who knows whether you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this. Please go to EzraInternational.org and give your best gift today.
Welcome back. So, Greta's Vanity Cruise, and ironically, The Independent, one of UK's biggest left-wing newspapers, they even called it Greta's Vanity Cruise. It's a word similar to that. Really quite surprising how even the extreme left can see the folly and the vanity of such an initiative. So, under Donald Trump's plan, the first initiative, the right one, is release the hostages. Point number one. How many hostages are there? Said to be 46. Thought to be 20 alive, 26 dead. Israel comment, as of a few hours ago, before this broadcast, we look to see all hostages released over the next few days, which is 3 days, Donald Trump 72 hours. Hamas, oh, we're not quite sure where they all are. Oh, really? Islamic Jihad might have some of them. So, if that is the case, how can Hamas, agree to release all hostages? Are the 26 dead and are the 20 alive? Because, quite frankly, you can't believe a word that Hamas say. However, as it probably is the end game, or getting close to the end game, it will be interesting to see what happens. Can I urge you, if you listen to this broadcast before the event, please pray for mercy. I've been asking you for this anyway. Pray for even more mercy for the hostages. Pray also that Hamas will not make a public spectacle of this to try and gain support and tell more lies and manipulate the situation. Going back to our pro-Palestine marches, no consent that's really known or believed by most of the people there, enacting out their own vanities, enacting out their own moral high grounds, enacting out their own moral virtues. Signals. Hamas, the negative version of the same kind of things. So that, in one sense, is the big problem concerning the hostages. The second problem, of course, is the demand that Hamas disarm. Hamas has said they want to have further discussions, but they're not prepared to disarm at this point in time. Then the disbandment and the relocation of Hamas, they're not really prepared to do that. But the bigger question is, if Hamas are allowed safe passage out of Gaza, where are they going to go? Most of the Arab countries won't want to take them, for sure. But if they did go somewhere else, they are simply just going to realign, rearm, reamass, reinvent maybe, and just the same things all over again. So what do you do with that? You tell me. I don't know. Let's ask the Lord to have mercy in this situation, and the Hamas and the other and Iran's other proxies will be thrown into great and increasing confusion. Then we come to the idea of, I'm really not really quite sure what to call it. It's been promoted here as a peace council. And Donald Trump, in his wisdom, has decided that Tony Blair is going to have a leading role in this. Our most left-wing Sunday newspaper here had a big picture of Tony Blair on the front with Tony of Arabia on the front. Seems to be rather conveniently forgotten that Tony Blair was accused of starting an illegal war and so on, which eventually cost him his premiership. Some people may have forgotten that, but the Arab nations certainly haven't forgotten it. If you read through their press, you'll see that. Well, Tony Blair's been a big player over the years with his Tony Blair Institute and been appointed as special envoy to the Middle East and been ubiquitous all over the place, spreading his own brand of universalism and globalism. I find this man, from a Christian viewpoint and a Jewish viewpoint, an alarming figure to be posited as very possibly the leading voice or the biggest influencer. Now, I'm sure his plans would benefit the people who live there to a certain degree, but he'd probably benefit much more himself and his coterie of globalists, universalists, and universal controllers of everything that everybody does. At the moment, there's a big contretemps about mandatory digital identity cards. But the Labour Party that Tony Blair still is a member of and very influential, this was his idea, but he couldn't get enough support for it back in the early noughties. However, Keir Starmer's determined to do it, and yesterday, despite a petition of 2.75 plus million people speaking against it, he made a declaration. He wasn't even to discuss it, he was going to do it anyway. So that is the state of democracy in the UK. And Tony Blair, who believes in these autocratic methods and globalism, is mooted as a man to direct what happens if this peace plan goes ahead. I have to say, I do not doubt Donald Trump's good intentions in this. And I do not live in America. And I always say to my American friends and colleagues, we do not live in the United States of America. We are entitled to read about it and even possibly have a personal opinion. But it's not for us to share that opinion with people who actually live there, because our lives are not affected directly by it. And quite frankly, the slogan's Make America Great Again. I wish we had the same slogan here. Make the UK great again. What methods to use might be open to debate, but even so, the Bible does point to nations having their own identity. Because in the last day, how can people come as peoples, tribes and nations to the Lord in the last days? So globalism and universalism really is not a biblical concept. In any biblical scholar's estimation, I would hope. So, we've got this very, very strange situation where a percentage of the population in the UK and in Europe and various other nations, and certainly Canada and Australia, seem to feel that all this posturing for Palestine is such a wonderful idea. And as I said in my previous broadcast, let's understand, this is for a one-state solution, not a two-state solution. And what would this second state be anyway? There's nothing in international law that defines it. No borders, no capital city, no standing army, no real constitution. Well, there's certainly the PLO constitution and the mass constitutions that call for the total annihilation of Israel, which I'm sure even the most left-wing or Democrat in your terms of America would agree can hardly be considered to be a foundational movement acceptable for any nation that's going to be recognised with any shape or form of legitimacy. So, in my closing 3 minutes or more, let's pray for the Jewish people worldwide. At one time, when I was a young man, yes, I know it was a long time ago, I used to think that all Jewish people should make Aliyah, and preferably as soon as possible. That was when Israel only had 2 million people there. As time went by, I realised that it wasn't everybody's time to go, but I've always believed it should be all Jewish people's ultimate aim. And if you didn't necessarily want to live there all the time, you should take your citizenship there and invest and build the land. That's what I always believed. I've come to the conclusion, sadly, that my first inclination was probably the right one. I do not think there's a safe place for Jewish people in the Western world at this moment in time. That is not to say there might not be one, but I hate to say this, but I doubt it will be in my lifetime. And maybe many of you that are viewing this. In UK, even today, I've had phone calls about making Aliyah. Interestingly enough, not so much for adults, but more for their children, particularly those in the rising teens and in teens. We have been able, in this last 2 or 3 months, to take some girls who were 18. The parents couldn't go. Sadly, in one case, just been killed in a car crash and had no close relatives that really wanted to keep them or anything. Well, there is a family that we have contact with, and they've taken these girls in and looked after them. They could have gone to a reception unit, but it's better for them. Nothing wrong with this, but it's better if you could have some warmth and affection from people that we know. In fact, even our own family. So, first the 2, then another one, and we've got some more we've been talking about today. They can go, be gently introduced before they go to school for a year, because it's got to learn Hebrew properly before they can do uni or go in the IDF, which they'll have to do at some stage, and be prepared for a gentle entry into life in Eretz Israel. So, that's what we're doing in the UK. We're concentrating very much on the younger ones. We've had a couple of boys as well. And also, interesting enough, some of our soldiers, we haven't got many, in the UK Army, who don't know what to do when they come out. They don't necessarily want to go straight into the IDF, because some of them have had enough of military life, but they'll have to do reserve anyway. But even so, they're thinking, what's to come home for? Nothing. So, I don't know which country you're in, if and when you watch this. I know we do get some viewers in the States. I know we get 1 or 2, no, not 1 or 2, I know we get a few in the UK. They don't watch on Rumble, they watch on something else, but even so, please pray more than ever for the Aliyah. Please put Zion in their hearts. Please tell them that the dice is not tightening, it's closing with very sharp claws. So, my dear ones, God be with you until we meet again.